So I'm here with Adam Krause, and he is here for episode 1 of what I'm calling Careers in Coding. So, hello, Adam.
Hi, how's it going, Matt?
And you work in...
I work in gaming, but don't work on the coding side of things. I actually work on the marketing side. So I figure out how to market the games and hopefully get people to buy them. I've worked for 2 video game publishers. I spent 4 years at 2K. They make games like Borderlands and NBA 2K are 2 of their bigger titles. They also work on Civilization and BioShock and a lot of other bigger games like that.
This is pretty awesome.
Yeah,
I'm sure the kids at Hackingtons would be like, what, you really worked on these video games?
I've worked on all of those games. And then before that, I was actually at Ubisoft, where I worked on Assassin's Creed and Just Dance and all the Tom Clancy titles as well. So yeah, I've been working at gaming publishers for about 10 years now. And prior to that, I worked on EA, working on the agency side. Actually, I worked for an advertising agency, supporting their Madden titles and Rock Band and things like that. It's funny, you mentioned coding, and I was actually, in college, I started out as a computer science major. Oh. So I was a computer science major for a little while, and then that changed into civil engineering. And then at a certain point, I was actually promoting concerts at the time, and I realized I really liked being involved in marketing.
Does every video game company have a marketing department?
It depends. So, I mean, the bigger video game publishers, I would look at it as publishers and studios. So if you look at it like from a book standpoint, you have publishers that basically specialize in getting a book pressed and distributed and things like that. That's what video game publishers do. And those are the big companies that, like 2K, Ubisoft, Electronic Arts, Activision's another big one.
Are they known as AAA gaming? Or what
I mean, AAA games are typically big blockbuster titles.
Okay.
So those are titles that have a huge marketing budget, a big production budget, and everything as well. But yeah, the publishers, they'll also put out single A and double A titles as well, which tend to be smaller, a little bit more niche, and maybe tend to be a little bit cheaper sometimes, and things like that. But so the publishers really, they kind of work on getting the games distributed and getting them out to market. But studios are the ones that actually make the games. So when you're talking about coders and engineers and things like that, most of the time they're going to work on the studio side. You still have engineers and folks that work on the publisher side, but they're working with the engineering teams for the games to help get them developed and distributed and stuff. But the ones that actually make the games themselves, those are the studios. And back to my analogy about authors and publishing houses, the studios are like the authors of the game. And then they work with a big studio or with a big publisher to bring those out to market.
It sounds like there's more steps than just code a video game.
Yeah, I mean, you could build a video game, but then there's a tricky part in trying to get people to buy it. And that's where marketing comes in. So some studios stay independent and actually don't work with big publishing houses, and then they try to self-publish their own games. So, and in that regard, they sometimes might bring on marketing people. They might hire agencies, something like that. But typically, you need the marketing folks to understand who's possibly going to buy this game, and then figure out how to message those folks. So, and whether it's advertising or emailing or whatever, how do you get the word out about the game so that people know to buy it?
So if I was studying or learning about marketing or having a career in marketing, what would I focus on in high school, in college? Would I major in marketing? What?
Majoring in marketing is great, but there's a lot of different types of marketing as well. So, just saying marketing in general, I mean, there's product marketing. Those folks are basically, they're working with like an engineering team on a game, for example, to make the game marketable. Because a good example is, you might have an idea of what a game is, but maybe it isn't going to sell very well. So what these folks do is they do the research on what audiences want and everything, and they kind of help work with the developers to kind of help make it more approachable so that more people are going to like the game.
When you market a new game and you feel like, oh, this is going to be big, this is going to work, and then it crashes. Have you ever had that happen to you?
It's hard for me to think of a time where I've worked on a game that was really a stellar game that didn't sell very well. I can think of one or two where, it's just you overestimated the size of the market maybe, and you thought that the game was going to be bigger than it was, and then it just didn't live up to expectations. That's happened a couple times. But most of the time, if it's like a really big AAA game and the quality is there, the game, and then you do a good job of getting the message out, then the game kind of sells itself.
There's so many video games out there. How do you get that video game to rise to number one?
Really, when it comes to making a game big, it's really a unified effort all the way from the development all the way through marketing. And you have to be going big and firing on all cylinders across the board, because number one, the development team is going to need the resources and the investment to really make a killer title and a killer game that really does very, very well. But then you also need the marketing team that's going to need budget to be able to advertise and be able to get the word out and things like that. And you need top-notch people working on everything to be able to make it all come together. So, I mean, you look at games like Call of Duty, which are traditionally always in the top 3 every year, a Call of Duty or Red Dead Redemption, Grand Theft Auto, they invest a ton in the development, but also they invest a ton in the marketing as well. And they have a top-notch team across the board that's managing all the different facets of taking that game to market.
And what kind of skills? You mentioned that at a video game company, there's a lot of different people working on a video game, and communication is probably kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
How would you say, what type of person would really fit into a marketing role?
A marketing role, I mean, definitely a collaborative person who likes working with other people. People who are very strategic, who like solving puzzles. That's one of the things that I really
creativity?
Like. Creativity, for sure, yeah, especially when you start talking about the creative side of it. That was one thing that I didn't even touch on, is you have creative teams that aren't touching the game at all, but they're making the ads, for example, or they're making that brand message. They're figuring out what message is going to resonate with people. And so, yeah, you definitely need very creative-minded people, but you also need strategic people. You need people who could balance numbers a lot, because particularly when you start talking about as much money as they spend on marketing, you need to be making sure that you're spending very wisely and efficiently. So it's important to have like performance marketing people that are going in there and bidding on different inventory and managing managing your advertising buys really effectively, so that you're getting as much bang for your buck as possible.
Yeah, and you're buying quite a bit of advertising sometimes,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Not just like $4 or $5 worth. You're buying.
No, I've run campaigns up to $70 million before. So
$70 million
yeah.
in advertising.
Yeah.
I hope that video game did well.
It did pretty well. So.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. So, would you say that learning to code or having some knowledge of how coding works and video game development works would help you in a marketing
I think definitely,
job?
Especially if you're talking about more of the product side of marketing, because then you know how to speak to the developers and you know how to talk to the engineers and really kind of collaborate with them on figuring out how to make the game marketable. And just understanding the ins and outs. So definitely having the background. I mean, everything is going to coding now anyway. It's becoming another language that we all need to know in some way, shape, or form. So even if you end up doing like the creative work or something, understanding how the game comes together. And I've found that the people that do have those skills of being able to code, a lot of that is like solving a puzzle in a lot of ways, and that helps foster creativity in a lot of ways too.
Do you have any advice for our high schooler students? What kind of industry in the video game realm, like really, where should they be looking right now?
I mean, I would say think about what you're passionate about. There's a little bit of something for everybody in the gaming industry, and if you really want to work in gaming, don't think that you have to be an engineer or a developer necessarily to be able to get into the gaming industry. There's a lot of other ways to work it. If you're a very creative type, think maybe about design work. If you like working with a lot of people very collaboratively and getting the word out and stuff, then marketing is a really good opportunity to kind of look at. If you like to just buckle down and really focus on just like projects and dig in, engineering or development can be really, really good too. So really think about what you love and then try to figure out how to pursue it, and it'll come together.
I'm just so curious. When you were growing up, your parents said, "Don't stop playing those video games. You'll never have a career in video games." Yeah. Did your parents ever say that to you?
And that happened a lot. And it's funny because my mom turned to me a little while ago and said, I never knew that all that time you spent playing Super Mario Brothers and Street Fighter would actually pay off to where now it's like putting a roof over your head and helping take care of your family and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Well, thank you so much for
thanks for having me. This has been great. So I hope it's helpful.